So, you thought that the hardest part of grad school would be the research. But it turns out it's figuring out how to get your advisor to answer your emails.
Or how to tell them that you're not revising chapter 3 for the 6th time.
Today, we're talking about how to manage your doctoral advisor like the professional you already are, without ghosting, without drama, and definitely without trauma dumping.
We'll help you figure out what's reasonable, what's not, and what to do when relationships get complicated.
I'm Nick Hughesby, Associate Professor of Elementary Literacy Education, K6 here at UNL.
And I'm Guy Training, Professor of Education at UNL.
And this is Not That Kind of Doctor. All right. Okay. So, you are like the grand poobah.
That feels uncomfortable, but sure.
Why is that uncomfortable?
I don't know. Poobah is a weird word. And I'm like, do I need to eat more and have an even more colorful shirt?
No,
that is what I'm saying.
You already have the presence. Like it's not a detraction.
No, I'm wondering if I can match up to the grand poobah.
You already match up to it. That's what I'm saying.
All right, I'll take it.
I believe in you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. So you're the grand poobah of doctoral advising. Like, let's just be real here. You eat, breathe, sleep, drink, swim,
love,
chat with.
Yes.
You do all kinds of things with doctoral students. So I would love some of your insights, particularly thinking early around what kinds of conversations do you have with your advisees early in their program, within like those first 6 months? Like, what are the things that you are doing to help them manage their expectations in terms of like, this is what you can expect from me. This is what you cannot expect from me. Ta-da!
So, and that's a lot, right? The first few conversations really aim at creating expectations for a timeline, because even people who have PhDs or other Ds in their family and the people they know are not necessarily aware of the expectations and especially the institution-specific paths. And so it's really important to talk about timelines early and clearly. And the advantage of having been around for quite a while and having been to over 100 dissertation committees is you get a really good sense of time. Yes. And so one of the first conversation is, no, you are not going to finish your degree in 2 to 3 years. That's one of the first conversations, because people come with unrealistic expectations, especially if they've gotten a master's and it took them between a year and 2 years. They're like, oh, it's the next thing, but it's going to take about the same time. And the answer is no, it's not. And more than that, if you do want to seek a job based on your accomplishment as a PhD, definitely if you want a job in academia, it's also a really bad idea. Because even 3 years is a really bad idea. Because,
wait, have we talked about those things before?
Yeah, I think we have.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah. So you really want to talk about timeline and what is the optimal timeline. You can be a little bit faster. You can be somewhat slower. Depends also on life circumstances, family circumstances, whether you're a full-time student or a part-time student. And so part of that conversation is adjusting the expectations. This is what it's going to take. These are some ideas that you want to think about. So for example, for part-time students that still want a job in academia, I talk about the option of, at one point or another, becoming a full-time student for a limited amount of time, so you can finish well and you can get all your ducks in a row. So you have a chance to teach in higher education, maybe both online and offline, all of these opportunities. So I talk about timeline. I talk about what are the things that will make your file for applying for a job complete. So it's talking about having research, having publications, presenting at conferences, and talking about teaching and saying, here are the things. You want to layer these things. You can't do all of them at once. So you've got to start thinking about this multi-year process and know, oh, I need at one point or another to teach. Not just TA, but actually, if at all possible, teach a class. And in my book, it's really good if you can teach something in person and something online in one format or another. So it's like putting all of the pieces. And the idea is to explain, here are the things that will most likely get you to the job you want to get. Now, I teach in the Innovative Learning Technologies unit right now. So I also think about, well, if you're seeking a job as an instructional designer, you need a portfolio. So how are you starting to build your portfolio with real products that were done for real clients so you can show them off? Especially now at the age of AI, how are you playing with AI? All of these things have to be really, really visible. So that's the first conversation, and that sets expectation. And then I talk about the phases, right? So we have about, you can think about it as 2 or 3 phases in doctoral education. There's the phase where you take classes and develop some pilot studies and do all of the things that is conversely probably the easiest part. Then you're doing the process to get candidacy with a comprehensive exam, a paper, or whatever gateway there is there that gets approved by a committee, and then the dissertation phase. So really thinking about what phase are you in, and then I talk to them about what support I give them in each phase. So early on, if you're doing some pilot studies, this is where I support you, but you're taking your classes, we're talking at least twice a semester just to get going, but a lot less attention. During the second and third phase, you're getting a lot of support from me. So in second phase, it's the preparation to the comprehensive exam and everything that goes around that. And then during the dissertation phase, and this is my message to them, you become my top priority. So when I get an email from somebody who's actually doing their dissertation, this is the first email I read. Even if I have 150 emails a day, which I do, and I tell them, at that point, you become a top priority. It doesn't mean I will give you an answer in 15 minutes, going back to setting boundaries, but I will give you an answer in 48 hours if the text is short enough, or I will give you at least something in 48 hours. If you're sending me 150 pages, it'll take me more than 48 hours to read that and respond to it. So these are the things I set, and we try to set as many working procedures as possible. And so they know, for example, I have open office hours every week, online or in person. So that's another, you can hop on at any time and use this. And I have students, for example, Ben, who you know, is very diligent. Every time he has a question, he jumps on, talks to me for 5 to 7 minutes, and hops off. And that's perfectly fine. I've got students who are a lot less in contact, and that always worries me because I can't support you if you don't come to me.
Right.
And I'm not going to chase you. You're an adult. You know where you are and what you need to do. So that's the balance of things for me. So those are the early things. Late things, as I said, is a lot of support especially during any pilot studies that they conduct, and of course dissertation. And I like very short feedback loops. So, and I tell my students, I would rather see 5 to 10 pages where I can respond to you quickly than seeing 150 to 200 pages where it's going to take me a while to sort through it. And if you went down a wrong path, now you're feeling like we did in the intro, that chapter 3 has to be redone for the 6th time. And so I try to make sure we don't get to that point.
Right, because at some point it's like you are doing a lot of that managing, right? And one of the things I've been working on this semester that I haven't had before is a user guide.
Oh, nice.
For myself.
Yeah.
That I can be like, I have one for undergrads that I've been working on, and I have one for graduate students that I've been working on in terms of, look, these are the rules of engagement.
Yes.
Because one of the things that I want to make sure that they understand is they're an important part of my working life.
Yeah.
Not the most important part, but they're pretty darn important. But that also doesn't mean that I'm available to them 24/7.
No, absolutely not.
Right.
And
laying out some of those things, like if you're sending me 150 pages to read, you need to also be like, here's what I want you to pay attention to on these pages.
Yeah.
Because I will respond to full drafts once you've got kind of these tiny mechanisms worked out.
Yeah.
But I can't like, oh, this is my first draft of my dissertation. Okay, what am I looking at? What do you want me to do? Because at that point, I need some focus, because really that's an independent project.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Ultimately, and I'm acting as editor.
Yes.
And so what does that
Editor
look like?
/ reviewer.
Yes. Right. So that's kind of how that's working. But I feel like that helps me, set up some professional boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Where ultimately at the end of the day, my advisees are paying money to be part of a program that is going to, as you said, hopefully result in some kind of change in what they are doing and who they are and how they are, progressing in their career. And so I try to always keep that in the front of my head, that I can be friendly, but we aren't necessarily friends, and that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. And that goes both ways. So I think about it from, if you're the student, you want to establish clear communication with your advisor. And I think the second thing you want to do is make sure that there's regular communication. And that is on you, because your advisor might have a few or a lot. They have a lot of other things they're doing. Going back to your point about you are a priority, but you're not my only priority. So establishing regular communication depending on what phase you are in. So if you're taking classes, again, twice a semester, probably fine. If you need more support, maybe more, but at least twice a semester, reach in and don't just send an email. Actually schedule them in advance. Say, let's talk one time in September, if it's the first semester, and one time in November. In September, we're talking about how things are going and whatever, research decision I'm making. And in November, maybe talk about what I'm planning for next semester. So make sure you're checking in enough and not as a surprise. Because if it's on people's calendar, if it's on your advisor's calendar, the problem is solved.
Right.
During the dissertation phase, if you need a lot of support, set a regular. Every 2 weeks, we meet for 20 minutes, just adjusting. This is how much progress I made. This is a question or two I have, and you move on. It doesn't need to be an hour meeting.
Yeah, no.
But check in. Check in so they know. So they're not surprised when suddenly you send them a 250-page manuscript and they're like, I have not heard from you in 2 years, and suddenly I have a dissertation manuscript.
What's going on?
What's going on? Did we have a discussion about this? This is not what I anticipated, and I really have not built, because one of the things that your advisor will do is build time for these things. Well, if it's coming as a surprise, they don't have time built in. And I'll be honest, I would not find the time to read 250-page manuscript. So build that in.
Truth. And if you are sending a 250-page manuscript in, just acknowledge the fact that they're not going to read it all, but be like, okay, pages 30 to 35.
Yes.
This is now gelling for me. Help me out. That's a different ask. And being aware of that kind of work. So there's this notion of like things for students to not do, but there's also things that we as advisors should not do, right? Like you hear horror stories.
Yes. I have many.
Oh gosh, what is that? It makes me nervous. Of like toxic relationships between advisees and advisors, where they're not focusing in on helping you develop as a scholar or as an instructor, or as a college higher ed professional, and more like, oh, every time we meet, all they do is they talk about their personal life.
Yeah.
And I'm like free therapy or free labor on their research projects.
Yes. And so those are things. Now, if you are participating in research projects, and sometimes it's a good opportunity, and maybe they don't have funding, they ask you to be part of it, there is a power imbalance here. And so you need to be aware of that. Now, if you negotiate, and you need to negotiate, okay, if I'm doing this, the first question you want to ask is, will my name be included on the paper?
Yes.
Because then you're getting some return on your investment. But if you're not, then you need to have the room to say no. And I know it's hard to say no to your advisor, but if it happens more than once and you're feeling uncomfortable, it may be time to have a hard conversation with your graduate chair or whoever's in charge, even department chair, where they maybe this relationship is not going well. And that's perfectly fine, and you can change advisor. One of the things I always talk to my advisees, but also to other people's advisees when I was graduate chair, is it is your program, and you should have the right to think about the relationship and say, this is not taking me where I need to go, and I need somebody else. Now, you can't do this every year or every semester.
Right.
You can do that probably once, maybe twice in your program, but really thinking through that relationship. If it starts feeling uncomfortable, then it's time to think and to try and have a conversation with your advisor. That is a very hard thing. ChatGPT is a great helper in trying to think through these conversations.
Oh yeah, no, it's totally helpful in terms of developing some scripts that I find one of the best ways, if you find yourself in a space where they're asking for an immediate response, I don't see my way clear here right now. Let me
have some time.
Look at everything that's on my docket right now, and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And that seems to be, that buys you some time and helps make it so that you have time to go and think through actually how much time do you have for this, what is the functionality, et cetera, so that you can navigate that.
And remember that if you have an assistantship and you have classes, you have a lot of your time already earmarked for these things. And you don't want to get to the position where you're not doing your, for example, research assistantship or teaching well because you're working on somebody else's project. This is what you can use as the boundary and say, right now I'm teaching 2 classes, which happens to some of our graduate students, and this is taking a tremendous amount of my time. I simply don't have the bandwidth right now. I would be happy to join when my load is a little bit lighter. And being honest about this, because remember that when you go out into the work world, people might ask for your teaching evaluation. And if your teaching suffered because you worked on some project, that may not be useful. So you want to be very careful about how you manage this and use the facts. Don't say, I don't feel comfortable or something like this, but have the conversation about, and you're very good at this, this is how much I'm investing in teaching right now. This is what I'm getting paid for, and this is how much I need time for class. So right now, I don't have time. And that's a very reasonable and reasoned argument to make that I think most advisors would respond to, because then, because as advisors, sometimes, I generate at least 5 ideas for research every day. And I would love to have somebody
every hour.
But
it's exhausting.
There's not enough time in the day. And so I want to be very careful to say, yes, I have these 5 ideas, but no, we cannot act on all of them because I don't have enough time and you don't have enough time.
What is the collective noun for doctoral students? Because I feel whatever that collective noun is, you have it.
I don't know. We'll have to come up with one.
I don't know why, but placket comes to placket. But that's a Ouija board thing. But that seems to be what you have.
Anyway, and I enjoy them immensely. Yes, so you went to emotional support, and on both sides, right? If you're a graduate student, you are not there to support your advisor. And if they overshare about what's happening in the department, maybe that's a time to choose to have less meetings for a while.
If they overshare about just their personal life.
Yes, personal life as well. But it also goes to, as graduate students, sometimes we find ourselves in tricky emotional places. And you can share with your advisor, and it's advisable to share that you are in that situation. but then you have to share about what are you doing about it. Most universities do have counseling available, and the minute it crosses between just momentarily, I'm feeling really overwhelmed, happens to all of us. There are also sessions for that, but the minute it gets a little bit more, whether you're potentially getting a divorce, which has happened to a fairly large number of graduate students of mine. I hope it's not my fault. But yes, it's a stressful time for many people. But if you are going through something that is more substantial, seek professional help. Your advisor is not your therapist, and vice versa, and you are not their therapist. So keep those boundaries alive, because once they are crossed, it just creates tensions that will not help you on your path to getting the degree completed. I touched a nerve there.
Well, no, while I will not do this, I want to get married just so I can be like, I'm leaving you for Guy.
That is not what I meant at all.
It's a new bucket list item.
It's a conversation.
New bucket list item. Never will happen.
I am feeling really uncomfortable right now.
I mean, why, Guy?
Yeah. All right. All right.
So keeping in mind that, like, you do want your advisor to invest in you as a person.
Yes.
And you want to do the same with your advisor, but acknowledging that there's some boundaries there, right? Particularly that you are not their friend. They are not your friend in the way that, like, I think friend is one of those words that has no meaning anymore. Thank you, Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg. So with some of my advisees, one, I have some advisees who find me too structured. I'm going to be real honest. I'm focused in on what do you want to happen after you get this degree, and we work towards that.
Yeah.
And you don't care about me. Well, I do, but I care about you in this way. Like that's I'm not a therapist. I have my therapist. I hope you have your therapist, but that is not my job, you know? And so with advisees, sometimes when they're working through that dissertations are rough. And if I'm not seeing movement, we'll meet for like half an hour to like parallel work, because I have to do it anyway. And the first 5 minutes is, how are you? What's going on? How's your life? Da-da-da-da-da. Here's what's going on in my life. Da-da-da-da-da. We grab a coffee and we work for 50 minutes and we move on.
Yeah.
Like, it's delightful. So there's a line there. You should not be acting as a therapist, right? So if that is something that you need, there are resources.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no advisor is going to be perfect in any given way, just simply because of the level of stuff that anyone has to do, right? There's always one of you.
Yes.
But there's multiple advisees that is on anyone's plate. So let's talk about how to get what you need. Let's say that you get the majority of your stuff, but not everything. You can't get everything from your advisor, and you shouldn't expect everything from your advisor. So, Guy, what's a piece of advice that you give students for building safety nets around their graduate advising?
So there are kind of two components. One is you have a committee, and even beyond the committee, you have other professionals that are available that you have taken classes with. And those are people that you can lean on when you need something specific. So for example, if you have a specific area of study where somebody else has expertise in and you need some advice about something that is very topically relevant, your advisor may be a great advisor, but they don't have that knowledge. Go and rely on other faculty members. Have that open conversation with their advisor to make sure that he or she understands, or they understand where you're going and what are you seeking. But it is very good. This is why you have a committee around you, especially for the critical dissertation phase. you are not just working with your advisor, you need more. You talked about sitting with you to kind of get people going, so parallel work. Parallel work is extremely powerful with peers. So developing a cohort of peers that are on the path with you, because that means that they will write the dissertation at about the same time. And parallel work, the most powerful thing at the dissertation phase that I've found is people that have peers that they're working with, and 2-3 times a week they sit together, sometimes just once. They sit together for a few hours and parallel write and keep each other, so have that accountability buddy and all of that. You don't have to expect that from your advisor. They're there to advise you, to give you some feedback. But for the day-to-day, peers are fantastic, and they can be just at your level, and then you're working parallel, and they can be a little bit more advanced, so they can guide you. Here's how I solved this problem. That's helpful as well, especially when you're in the first phase and you need to have a vision of what's coming next.
Yeah, so building that kind of peer group that's at the same developmental stage as you are is one way to do that, relying on additional faculty. And then if you're finding yourself feeling like ghosted, like your advisor has just kind of disappeared, one, they've probably not disappeared. But faculty life is also kooky, and ask for what you need. So zip an email and be specific. Don't just say, oh, I'd like to meet. Hey, do you have any availability? These dates, these times. Make it actionable. And that will be super helpful. Also, so like this is something that I have had said to me, like, I feel like I've been ghosted. Well, if you're in a cohort and your cohort model, like part of the cohort model is that initial advising is built into that program if it's truly a good cohort. So for me as an advisor, once I know when a cohort's being a cohort or not being a cohort, right? Like I know how to tackle that and can be more specific about what's not happening in the cohort that should be, and responding to that. Is that general enough?
So if you feel like you're being ghosted, be proactive and communicate clearly about what you need. And again, that specificity, people say, hey, we can meet. And my answer is always, great. When do you have time? Because people are teaching at different times and all of that. And again, I try to make graduate students a priority, but I have a very busy schedule. So if you give me 2 times, I can do that. If you ask me, what times do you have available? I don't know.
Check my calendar.
Tuesday, check my calendar if you have access, and you should have access. That helps. If you check my calendar, usually students get scared, so that may not be the best choice ever. So those are things to think about. How are you thinking about students being micromanaged if you feel like your advisor is always in your business at the micro level?
Like that, So I am not a huge fan of micromanagement.
I am not a fan of micromanagement, period. But
right? And it
exhausts me to just think about micromanaging somebody else.
I don't have time. I don't have time.
Yes. But what do you do if you're a student and you find yourself in that situation?
So, I mean, I think part of that conversation around micromanagement could be talking about, okay, so thanks for all of this. Can you help me figure out the function of how this is helping me meet this goal?
Yeah.
Like, is all of this necessary? Because sometimes if you're thinking about, you're working on a research project with your advisor around the implementation of a particular intervention, is that micromanagement or is that integrity to the actual project? Yeah. So is it truly micromanagement and sorting that out? But if it's like, you will do this, 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 like if you're talking about programming and they've asked for no input from you, then that might be more micromanagement than you're prepared for. And you can respond to that with, okay, here's my function. Can you help me lay out how all of this my function for being in this program, can you help me lay out how this plays out in regards to where I want my end result to be, versus you're telling me to do all these things blindly a little bit. How does that work, right?
And I think the important thing about that conversation is to know that these conversations are never easy. And
No.
you need and practice them before you have them, because you are pushing back at that moment. And I know it feels like you can't, you should. Because eventually it is your degree and it is your program. Just like working for no benefit is a problem, this can become a problem really, really quickly. And so you want to address this and address this earlier. So once you feel that there's a pattern, I would say address this early, because the more you wait, the harder it is to change a pattern.
Right. And then you end up with that pattern for your entire professional life, right?
Yes,
and that's awkward. No one likes that. So it's a difficult conversation. Be prepared to go in there with it being difficult. Have it, get it over with. The only way through is through, you know? Or don't complain about it. I mean, I hate to say that, but like, if you're not willing to put in the work to change those circumstances, should they know not to micromanage? Of course. However, if they're not getting feedback that they micromanage, how are they supposed to know?
Yes.
Right?
And they may have, again, experienced that pattern and think this is how you should do this.
Right.
And so, again, and I do want to add one more thing, and that is different people as graduate students feel that they need different levels of support. So some people need a lot more support and they ask for it. So I can be a lot more structured with some students and a lot less structured with others. But the goal is always to make you independent. And if you're completely micromanaged, you're never independent. You're never making decisions about research, never making decisions about teaching. So it is important to get to that point where you get to do it on your own.
Right, because part of it is, where's my professional decision-making being developed, right? And so when you're micromanaging, that's not great. And then, so if it gets to a point where your advisor's not responsive to any of it, or they're not responsive in terms of they're just not emailing you,
Yes.
or they're not responsive to, you've had the difficult conversations, you've put in that labor, and that has rendered no dividends, there's no ROI, then you might need to escalate it to your graduate chair. And there's some graceful ways to do that. There are some ways that are more graceful than others. When you're thinking about talking with the graduate chair, laying out, here's what the situation is, here's the instances, here's how I've already attempted to work this through. I just don't think that this is a good fit for me. What would you advise? Whereas if you go full out Karen, they've done this, they've done this, they've done this, they've done this, they've done this. If it's all about them, but you're not accounting for what you have done and brought, like, it takes two to tango. And being clear about why you're feeling this action is necessary is probably the most graceful way to do this. And ensuring that that you have your receipts, right? Like, you've done what you need to do in order to make the case for why you need to move to a different advisor or change program or what have you.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, it depends on what the concern is. It doesn't mean necessarily that you have to switch to a different advisor. Sometimes just a conversation with graduate chair, especially, for example, if you have an advisor who's fairly new to the profession, so they may not have the accumulated wisdom and somebody needs to have a conversation with them, that might be useful as well. So it's not always about changing. Sometimes it's just about adjusting expectations and setting boundaries.
And sometimes it's just about someone showing up at your office and going, check your spam.
Yes, sometimes that too. So it can be many things.
Because this new AI in Outlook has not been my friend.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, I'm not a fan.
All right.
Not a fan.
So, but the key is, what did you do? Right? What have you tried? What are your concerns? and try to make it as little as possible about showing passive in this relationship.
Right. So you want to maintain the appropriate level of drama, right?
Yes.
Like this is not. It's if usually it's like it's a subtle art house film, right? This is not Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Where things are battling out. It might feel like that, but typically.
Now, I do want to enter that. It is Lord of the Rings if there's any inappropriate behavior.
Oh yes. Oh, that's
that's
not
no.
what we're.
At that moment, we stop everything and you go and report whatever needs to happen. Those are not non-negotiable. We're not trying to say that. But if it's about not being responsive or being micromanaged, that's not.
Let's back up because we're talking about.
Yes.
Regular,
yes.
Run-of-the-mill.
Yes.
Those are anomalies. Those are extreme. Those are not. Those don't happen often. But if they do, then yeah, Sauron is out there. Rally the elves. And then, but for the most part, like the quotidian, daily stuff, it's more of a low level thing. And I think throughout all this, I think it's important for you to remember that managing your advisor feels weird, but it's not about being manipulative. It's really not. It's about being strategic. You are investing a lot of money and a lot of time in your graduate program. And your advisor is going to invest a lot of time and a lot of energy in you. So keep in mind that you're not just a student. You are a colleague in training.
And part of that training is really learning how to advocate for yourself with clarity, with professionalism, and with clear boundaries.
Tell us your best or worst advisor moments in the comments, and anonymous confessions are welcome.
And check the show notes for practical scripts and boundary setting prompts that you can start using today.
And until next time, stay grounded, stay assertive, and remember, you're not alone in this.
And
we're not that kind of doctor.